Sarah Plain and Tall, Chapter 2. Caleb and Papa and I wrote letters to Sarah, and before the ice and snow had melted from the fields, we all received answers. Mine came first. Dear Anna, yes, I can braid hair, and I can make stew and bake bread, though I prefer to build bookshelves and paint. My favorite colors are the colors of the sea, blue and gray and green, depending on the weather. My brother William is a fisherman, and he tells me that when he is in the middle of a fog-bound sea, the water is a color for which there is no name. He catches flounder and sea bass and bluefish. Sometimes he sees whales and birds, of course. I am enclosing a book of seabirds so you will see what William and I see every day. Very truly yours, Sarah Elizabeth Wheaton. Caleb read and read the letter so many times that the ink began to run and the folds tore. He read the book about seabirds over and over. Do you think she'll come? Asked Caleb. And will she stay? What if she thinks we're loud and pesky? You are loud and pesky, I told him, but I was worried too. Sarah loved the sea. I could tell. Maybe she wouldn't want to leave there after all to come to where there were fields and grass and sky and not much else. What if she comes and doesn't like our house? Caleb asked. I told her it was small. Maybe I shouldn't have told her it was small. Hush, Caleb, hush. Caleb's letter came soon after with a picture of a cat drawn on the envelope. Dear Caleb, my cat's name is Seal because she is gray like the seals that swim offshore in Maine. She is glad that Lottie and Nick send their greetings. She likes dogs most of the time. She says their footprints are much larger than hers, which she is enclosing in return. Your house sounds lovely, even though it is far out in the country with no close neighbors. My house is tall, and the shingles are gray because of the salt from the sea. There are roses nearby. Yes, I do like small rooms sometimes. Yes, I can keep a fire going at night. I do not know if I snore. Seal has never told me. Very truly yours, Sarah Elizabeth. Did you really ask her about fires and snoring? I asked, amazed. I wished to know, Caleb said. He kept the letter with him, reading it in the barn and in the fields and by the cow pond, and always in bed at night. One morning early, Papa and Caleb and I were cleaning out the horse stalls and putting down new bedding. Papa stopped suddenly and leaned on his pitchfork. Sarah has said she will come for a month's time if we wish her to, he said, his voice loud in the dark barn. To see how it is, just to see. Caleb stood by the stall door and folded his arms across his chest. I think, he began, then, I think, he said slowly, that it would be good to say yes, he finished in a rush. Papa looked at me. I say yes, I told him, grinning. Yes, said Papa, then yes it is. And the three of us, all smiling, went to work again. The next day, Papa went to town to mail his letter to Sarah. It was rainy for days, and the clouds followed. The house was cool and damp and quiet. Once I set 4 places at the table, then caught myself and put the extra plate away. 3 lambs were born, one with a black face. And then Papa's letter came. It was very short. Dear Jacob, I will come by train. I will wear a yellow bonnet. I am plain and tall. Sarah. What's that? Asked Caleb excitedly, peering over Papa's shoulder. He pointed. There, written at the bottom of the letter. Papa read it to himself, and then he smiled, holding up the letter for us to see. Tell them I sing, was all it said. Chapter 3. Sarah came in the spring. She came through green grass fields that bloomed with Indian paintbrush, red and orange, and blue-eyed grass. Papa got up early for the long day's trip to the train and back. He brushed his hair so slick and shiny that Caleb laughed. He wore a clean blue shirt and a belt instead of suspenders. He fed and watered the horses, talking to them as he hitched them up to the wagon. Old Bess, calm and kind, Jack, wild-eyed, reaching over to nip Bess on the neck. "Clear day, Bess," said Papa, rubbing her nose. "Settle down, Jack." He leaned his head on Jack, and then Papa drove off along the dirt road to fetch Sarah, Papa's new wife. Maybe our new mother. Gophers ran back and forth across the road, stopping to stand up and watch the wagon. Far off in a field, a woodchuck ate and listened. Caleb and I did our chores without talking. We shoveled out the stalls and we laid down new hay. We fed the sheep. We swept and straightened and carried wood and water. And then our chores were done. Caleb pulled on my shirt. "Is my face clean?" he asked. "Can my face be too clean?" He looked alarmed. "No, your face is clean, but not too clean," I said. Caleb slipped his hand into mine and we stood on the porch, watching the road. He was afraid. "Will she be nice?" he asked. "Like Maggie?" "Sarah will be nice," I told him. "How far away is Maine?" he asked. You know how far. Far away by the sea." "Will Sarah bring some sea?" he asked. "No, you cannot bring the sea." The sheep ran in the field, and far off the cows moved slowly to the pond like turtles. "Will she like us?" asked Caleb very softly. I watched a marsh hawk wheel down behind the barn. He looked up at me. "Of course she will like us." He answered his own question. "We are nice," he added, making me smile. We waited and watched. I rocked on the porch, and Caleb rolled a marble on the wood floor. Back and forth, back and forth. The marble was blue. We saw the dust from the wagon first, rising above the road, above the heads of Jack and old Bess. Caleb climbed up onto the porch roof and shaded his eyes. "A bonnet!" he cried. "I see a yellow bonnet." The dogs came out from under the porch, ears up, their eyes on the cloud of dust bringing Sarah. The wagon passed the fenced field, and the cows and the sheep looked up too. It rounded the windmill and the barn and the windbreak of Russian olive that Mama had planted long ago. Nick began to bark, then Lottie, and the wagon clattered into the yard and stopped by the steps. "Hush," said Papa to the dogs, and it was quiet. Sarah stepped down from the wagon, a cloth bag in her hand. She reached up and took off her yellow bonnet, smoothing back her brown hair into a bun. She was plain and tall. "Did you bring some sea?" cried Caleb beside me. "Something from the sea," said Sarah, smiling. "And me." She turned and lifted a black case from the wagon, and Seal, too. Carefully, she opened the case, and Seal, gray with white feet, stepped out. Lottie lay down, her head on her paws, staring. Nick leaned down to sniff, and then he lay down, too. "The cat will be good in the barn," said Papa, "for mice." Sarah smiled. "She will be good in the house, too." Sarah took Caleb's hand and then mine. Her hands were large and rough. She gave Caleb a shell, a moon snail, she called it, that was curled and smelled of salt. "The gulls fly high and drop the shells on the rocks below," she told Caleb. "When the shell is broken, they eat what is inside." "That is very smart," said Caleb. "For you, Anna," said Sarah, "a sea stone." And she gave me the smoothest and whitest stone I had ever seen. The sea washes over and over and around the stone, rolling it around until it is round and perfect. "That is very smart, too," said Caleb. He looked up at Sarah. "We do not have the sea here." Sarah turned and looked out over the plains. "No," she said, "there is no sea here, but the land rolls a little like the sea." My father did not see her look, but I did, and I knew that Caleb had seen it too. Sarah was not smiling. Sarah was already lonely. In a month's time, the preacher might come to marry Sarah and Papa, and a month was a long time enough for her to change her mind and leave us. Papa took Sarah's bags inside where her room was ready with the quilt on the bed and blue flax dried in a vase on the night table. Seal stretched and made a small cat sound. I watched her circle the dogs and sniff the air. Caleb came out and stood beside me. "When will we sing?" he whispered. I shook my head, turning the white stone over and over in my hand. I wished everything was as perfect as the stone. I wished that Papa and Caleb and I were perfect for Sarah. I wished we had a sea of our own.